The flames rose like living walls, roaring against the sky of Babylon. The sound of the furnace was like continuous thunder, fueled not only by fire, but by the pride of a king who believed himself above even the gods. Nebuchadnezzar, lord of the greatest empire on earth, stood upon his golden throne as if beholding his own creation. But on that day, he would not see only embers and punishment. He would see something that would defy all limits of human power, something no ruler had ever dared to imagine. The king's face, shaped by glory and fury, would be transformed by astonishment. For on that day, amidst the flames, he would see the impossible. When we speak of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, it is common to think of fearless youths, faithful to God to the very end. But this episode goes far beyond courage. It goes beyond fidelity. It is about a direct encounter with the divine, a moment when heaven broke through the barrier of time and matter and revealed itself before unbelieving eyes. What happened there, before the furnace, was more than a miracle. It was a visible manifestation of God's glory before one of the most powerful men who ever lived. And it changed everything. If you love profound revelations like this and want to dive deeper into the hidden truths of the Bible, subscribe to the channel now. Activate the bell and share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that God still walks through the fire with his servants. Your subscription helps us continue bringing messages that touch, teach, and transform. The book of Daniel chapter 3 takes us to a scene of rising tension. Nebuchadnezzar was not merely a king, he was the very symbol of earthly supremacy. His empire dominated peoples, languages, cultures. His word was law, his image was revered. And like any man intoxicated by power, he sought more. He wanted not only to control, but to be worshipped. It was in this spirit of self-exaltation that he ordered the construction of a gigantic golden statue, an icon of himself, erected in the plain of Dura, so that all peoples would bow down in reverence. The order was simple. At the sound of the instruments, everyone was to fall face down and worship the image. Whoever refused would be thrown alive into a blazing furnace. It was a fusion of worship and coercion, religion and terror. But on that day, while thousands bowed, 3 young men remained standing. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to bend their knees before a false god. They knew the cost. They knew they were provoking the king's wrath, but they also knew something greater, that fidelity to the Lord is non-negotiable. When the Chaldeans noticed the resistance of the Hebrew youths, they rushed to the king with a venomous gleam in their eyes. It was not merely a report, it was betrayal disguised as loyalty. O king, 3 men did not bow before your image. They are Jews, the same ones you placed in positions of honor. And now they dishonor you with their disobedience. Nebuchadnezzar's fury was immediate. He ordered the 3 to be brought before him, but there, before the golden throne, the youths did not tremble, not even when the king offered them one last chance. Now, if you are ready to worship the image, all will be well. But if you do not worship, you will be thrown immediately into the furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hands? The response came with a peace that cut through the royal hall like an invisible sword. O king, we do not need to answer you on this matter. If our God wills, he will deliver us from your hand and from the fire. But even if he does not, we will not worship your image. It was not defiance, it was surrender. It was faith that did not depend on outcomes, but on conviction. They did not serve God for guarantees, they served because they knew him. The words struck Nebuchadnezzar like burning embers. The king's countenance twisted, mercy evaporated. The order was given. Heat the furnace 7 times hotter than usual. Elite soldiers were summoned to bind the youths and cast them into the flames. But even those soldiers did not escape. The flames, now inflamed by the king's pride, consumed the warriors before they could step away. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego fell into the furnace, bound, surrounded by fire. to human eyes, the end had come. But at that exact moment, heaven moved. History paused in silence. And then it happened. From his throne, the king rose abruptly, his eyes fixed on the furnace in astonishment. He turned to his counselors and asked, "Did we not cast 3 men into the fire?" "Yes, O king." "Then why do I see 4 men unbound, walking in the midst of the flames, and none of them is harmed? And the fourth has the appearance of a son of the gods." The scene is unparalleled. Inside the furnace, where there should have been death, there is life. Where there should have been silence, there is movement. 3 men who were once bound are now free. And they are not alone. A 4th being accompanies them. It is not merely an angel. It is someone whose presence transcends reality, a being whose glory radiates even amidst the flames, a Christophany, a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ. This 4th man did not watch from heaven. He descended. He entered the furnace. He walked with the youths. He was with them in the midst of the trial, and his presence changed everything. The fire lost its authority. Death lost its power. The king's sentence was annulled by the presence of God. Nebuchadnezzar, the same king who moments before had defied the God of Israel, now stepped back, overcome by awe. He approached the furnace and, with a trembling voice, cried out, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here." The language had changed. The king who demanded worship now recognized divine authority. No longer did he call the youths insubordinate, but servants of a God he had never known. The steps of the 3 youths resounded like silent thunder on the barren ground of Babylon. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego emerged from the furnace not as scarred survivors, but as living witnesses of absolute deliverance. Their clothes were intact, their hair untouched, no smell of smoke, no trace of destruction. The fire that killed soldiers and threatened to destroy faith was humiliated before an entire crowd that expected to see ruins and instead saw glory. What was meant to be the end became the greatest stage for the manifestation of the God of Israel in enemy territory. And there stood the princes, the satraps, the counselors, the magistrates, all the empire's elite, gathered to witness the failure of Hebrew faith, but now forced to behold the power of the eternal. No one could speak. No one dared deny what had happened, for what their eyes saw was neither metaphor nor illusion. It was deliverance. It was a miracle. It was God in action. And when God acts, even kings fall silent. But what impressed the king most was not just their survival. It was the way they emerged. Whole, free, honored. What bound them was consumed, but what sustained them remained. There was no arrogance in their gaze, no provocation in their gestures. There was reverence, peace, and a light that seemed to come from within, a presence that, even outside the furnace, still accompanied them. It was as if that 4th man, the one who walked among the flames, was still with them, invisible to ordinary eyes, but palpably real. And in that moment, something unprecedented happened. The most powerful king on earth bowed, not physically, but spiritually. He raised his voice before all and declared, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him." Daniel 3:28. The one who once threatened with furnaces now acknowledged a power that surpassed the limits of fire, a God who delivers, a God who responds, not with swords or thunder, but with presence. Nebuchadnezzar's declaration was not merely praise. It was a momentary renunciation of his own sovereignty. By decreeing that no one could blaspheme against this God, he was admitting that for the first time he had encountered something before which his throne was powerless. Something he could not control, could not intimidate, could not manipulate. And this revelation, though incomplete, cracked the hardened heart of the king. The golden statue lost its luster. The decree lost its force. Babylon, for a moment, was touched by heaven. Yet what makes this story even more powerful is not just the deliverance, but what it represents. God did not merely save the youths, he manifested himself within the trial. He did not prevent them from being thrown in. He chose to be with them in the midst of the flames. This completely shifts the perspective on suffering and fidelity. Because often we expect God to deliver us from the furnace, but he prefers to enter it with us. His presence transforms the trial into a platform, the pain into a pulpit, the fire into a testimony. It was in the furnace, not outside it, that the king saw the Son of the Most High. This episode teaches us that true faith is not that which demands miracles, but that which remains steadfast even without guarantees. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not know if they would be spared. They received no prior revelations. They simply trusted. They trusted in God's character, not in specific promises. And so, even without seeing the outcome, they chose not to bow. And that faith which stands firm in the face of death, is the faith that moves heaven. But the deepest truth may still lie ahead. For this was neither the first nor the last time the Son of the living God appeared in the Old Testament. The figure of the fourth man is what theologians call a Christophany, a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ before his birth in Bethlehem. He who is eternal, who was with the Father from the beginning, occasionally manifested before the incarnation for specific moments when the presence of the Word was needed to sustain God's people. It was he who appeared to Joshua as a warrior with a drawn sword. It was he who walked with Abraham in human form toward the destruction of Sodom. It was he who entered the lion's den to shut the mouths of the hungry beasts. And now it is he who steps into the flames of Babylon to show that God's glory cannot be extinguished by human fire. Christ did not begin to exist in Mary. He is the Alpha and the Omega, the one who was, who is, and who is to come. And there is something even more revealing. The youths were thrown in bound, but they emerged free. The fire did not consume them, but it burned what held them. This speaks to a profound spiritual principle. Sometimes the trial does not come to destroy us, but to set us free. What limits us, what binds us, what hinders us from walking freely with God, all of it can be undone in the heat of affliction. What binds, burns. What is of God, remains. The fire had no power over the essence of the youths, but it had divine permission to destroy what restrained them. And what of Nebuchadnezzar, the king who had erected statues, promoted idolatry, and set himself up as nearly divine? He did not convert that day, not fully, but something in him was shaken. The foundation of his arrogance began to crack. The vision of glory did not transform him instantly, but it planted a seed that would later sprout in humiliation and full recognition of divine sovereignty. As we will see in the next chapter of Daniel, God does not merely confront kings, he transforms hearts, and sometimes he uses the fire of others to reveal the fragility of the powerful. Babylon was the center of the world, but on that day, the center shifted. It was no longer on the golden throne, but in the furnace. The stage of punishment became an altar, and the three youths, once accused of disobedience, became silent prophets, proclaiming with their stance, their steadfastness, and the miracle that there is one God, and he reigns over all, even the kingdoms of the earth. This story has crossed centuries, remained alive in biblical records, and inspired generations. Because the fire remains a spiritual reality, many are still pressured to bow. Many still face furnaces of rejection, loss, persecution. But the God who was with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is still the same. He still enters the flames. He still breaks chains. He still reveals his presence where all seemed doomed to end. The question remains, faced with the statue of the system, would you bow? Faced with the furnace, would you yield? Or would you choose to stand firm, trusting that even if God does not deliver you, He is still worthy of your fidelity? The story of these three youths is not just an ancient account. It is a summons, a call to remain steadfast, even when everything around you roars like fire. The fourth man still walks in the midst of the fire. He was not only seen in the furnace of Babylon, he continues to reveal himself among the flames of our generation. When everything around you seems lost, when the world demands that you bow, remember, there is a God who enters the trial with you. And if He is there, no flame can consume you. May your faith not depend on deliverance, but on the certainty that you will never be alone. For where there is fidelity, there will be presence. And where there is presence, there is victory, until the end.